All right, so I'm so happy to have on this impromptu uh,
Yeah.
impromptu uh, podcast Jay Chung. He's an EDD and instructional designer out of California who has been tearing it up, not only in the work that he does, but also in on TikTok. And so I'm gonna put a link to this podcast so you can see me talk about Jay, who was introduced to me by a good friend, Monica, and and so here we are. This is supposed to be just an informal meeting, and Jay said, "Let's do it, man. Let's go ahead." So Jay, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and where you're from and what you do.
Yeah, I appreciate the shout out. It's made me feel special right there. Yeah, so no, I came from a classroom teaching background, like, many instructional designers who lost the passion to teach. You go into teaching thinking it's one thing, and then you notice, you have the classroom management issues, you have the bureaucracy, you have all kinds of problems. And I wanted a way out, but then I didn't know anything about, other sectors. Like with the teaching degree, I didn't know there's other careers out there. So I accidentally, while pursuing my doctorate in education, hoping to get into the college level because it's easier than K through 12, I accidentally stumbled upon instructional design. And that was on, I think, monster.com. I was,
Wow.
typing in teaching instructor, and then there's an autofill that said instructional design, and that was like the light bulb. And from there, it was, that was it. That's what I wanted to do. I checked the job description and the roles, and it was dealing with technology, which I enjoyed as a teacher, utilizing technology.
Yeah.
And I just soaked up all of the softwares, like Captivate and Articulate, and then started picking up small jobs, starting with Craigslist, and then I had recruiting companies, get your resume, and then they'll connect me with companies, and from there, that was it. I just kept doing that for the past 10 plus years. And now, as a contractor, I have not gotten I try to stay away from like a W-2 role. I don't like to be a full-time employee. I know there's tons of instructional designers who are, who like that stability.
Sure.
But for me, I like, having the autonomy, having the freedom. And it allows me to learn more about organizations and learn more about e-learning and how they utilize e-learning for their company. Every organization is different, and how they utilize authoring tools and how they, train their employees is different. So I like it. I've done e-learning projects for tons of industries. I think I did one for, Microsoft and Cisco,
Uh,
Amazon. I did a project with Amazon, and then you got Argonne National Laboratory. I did one with the military. Just a lot,
yeah.
and I like it. It builds my resume, and recruiters and vendors like to see a lot of, stuff on your resume.
What is the average time for your projects?
Good question. I would say maybe it could be 3 months. It could be a year. I think the longest was a year and a half. And then you have the
Wow.
sporadic ones where you have a contract with them for maybe 2 3 years, but then you'll have gaps. You do a project and then you don't hear from them, do another project. So for me, I prefer to have multiple projects, at least two. Sometimes I got at one point I got like five or something, which was a lot. But
Yeah.
not all of them are firing at the same time. So
Sure.
I try to have at least two. Unless it's a guaranteed project where you're like, hey, we need you 40 hours every week, then I'll take on less. But you can't rely on one company.
Right. Right. So I was going to ask you. So two projects going on at the same time, or more or less at the same time. How much time do you think you're spending on any given day, uh, actually doing the work?
Yeah, good question. The bandwidth, I try to tell each client my bandwidth is about usually 20, sometimes 30. But then, and then I like to underestimate. I don't want to tell them I could work 30 hours and only work 20. I'd rather say I do 20 hours and then actually do 30. So I try to, when it's busy, I can bill, maybe 60, 70 hours a week, which is a lot, which is, it's not ideal.
Sure. That's a lot. That's a lot of time.
Yeah. And then, but then I have to prepare for the weeks that you're not working because things halt. I've had projects just halt. So you got to be careful and it's like a feast or famine. I tell people, you're busy, you're super busy, and you got to try to bill as much as you can and finish as many projects as you can. And then you got to prepare for those weeks where nothing is going on.
You said you've been doing this now for a decade, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at, and this is more, for people who are just starting out in the space, what is the typical, Epsom flow of your job as an instructional designer, as a contractor? I mean, do you feel that there's some months that are busier than others? Do you feel that there's maybe some times where companies reach out to you more than others? Anything you could say
You know
about
what?
that?
I've not done the statistical analysis on that, but I think it's random. Sometimes the summer months might be slower.
Okay.
I think last year, January might have been slower. This year, I think the past few weeks have been slower. So I think it's random. I think it's random because it's dependent on when I can accept the projects. I think for a while, I was telling people I don't have the bandwidth. People keep reaching out to me, especially like the e-learning companies where they build courses for their companies. Those ones, it's a bit more work. But I've been saying a no to a lot, and I haven't even been responding to recruiters for a while. So those kind of make an impact too, because when the project ends, I've already missed out on a lot of those opportunities. And so I don't know. I think it's sporadic. I know when COVID hit, I was getting nervous because I thought we were going to hit a recession. I was like, oh man, this is going to be my first recession here. And, I don't know what's going to happen.
What's interesting, and I don't know, during the last recession in 2008, maybe it was because of the line of work I was doing, but I felt that I was actually at my busiest. Like I had
Oh,
to.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, because and maybe it's because I was teaching at the college level and people were going back to school. Maybe that's the case. But I'm wondering now that with COVID and post-COVID, if more companies are gonna opt to translate their learning operation into on demand and e-learning more so than ever. What do you think? Are you sensing anything there?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, more companies are going to the remote and hybrid option. So I think that obviously is related to e-learning. So I think it does impact instructional design and how much of a demand it has. I've seen a posting. I think Cisco and Amazon were hiring all kinds of instructional designers within the past month. But yeah, it seems to be growing. I think I don't know what I'm doing by exposing instructional design to a whole bunch of teachers, but I'm like hurting myself. But it's I don't want to hide this career from all those teachers who desperately want to get out. A lot of the people that follow me on TikTok, I know they're teachers and they really want to get out of teaching. And I feel for them because I've been there.
Yeah, and it's I think that we talked about it before we started recording, that most of us get into this space by mistake. I mean, not by mistake, by accident.
Accident, yeah.
Right? And so it happened with you. It certainly happened with me. This is my second career, and but it's a space that I think we're just scratching the surface. What do you think? I mean, I think that's the future is.
Yeah, definitely. I think once VR becomes mainstream. Right now we have like the metaverse. I've never tried it, but I can see that being a huge potential. And then you have the augmented reality. But then training in L&D, I think it's lagging because, you know, like right now, even mobile is like a new thing for e-learning.
And micro learning and nano learning.
And having it being compatible with mobile, those things just started going on board maybe past few years. So we're a little slow to adopt, but I think it's definitely more and more in demand.
How much? What are the major changes you've seen since you started? 10 years ago to now. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen?
I would say one, searching for jobs is obviously different. Before it could have been Craigslist. I remember Craigslist being a popular route for me, and like telling them, "Hey, here's my work. Here's how I can help you."
Yeah.
Now LinkedIn is definitely probably one of the main sources for getting connected with companies. And then you have a lot of recruiting companies that use your resume to make sure that you get connected with their clients. So getting hired, the way you get hired, I think has kind of shifted differently. My guess is there's probably a lot more e-learning companies out there who's trying to sell their services to clients. There's obviously mobile is a popular one, and I think right now just Articulate Storyline is the dominant software now, or Articulate is the dominant software.
Yeah.
Before you had you had Articulate Studio with the PowerPoint add-on, then you had Captivate, and then Lectora I think was pretty prevalent.
Yeah.
I mean, Storyline has definitely been the main player in authoring tools and e-learning. Articulate has probably in the last 5 years, maybe.
Do you use Rise much, or?
And Rise too. Rise is a popular, like the whole story. Articulate products.
Got it.
Has been the dominant. Like Captivate is just fading away.
Yeah, I agree. I never dove too much into Captivate. I did do a lot of work earlier on in Lectora because it was web-based. It was a little clunky, but I think it got the work done. You could do a lot of stuff with Lectora. But my go-to, especially when I'm doing too many projects, is Rise, right? It's just and it looks so beautiful on mobile devices, right?
Oh yeah, it does. I like it.
It interacts very, very well with mobile devices. So
yeah.
Do you find that well, let me ask you maybe a two-part question. Do you feel that your design changes when you are, let's say, being hired by like an independent company versus a company that is that creates content? I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but maybe a company that wants you to hire an instructional designer to create their content versus a content provider. Do you feel that the design, the design style changes much?
No, I don't think it changes much. I think it gets a little trickier when I noticed working with companies that may focus on just building e-learning courses for their company. Mm-hmm. I notice if there's an instructional designer on the client side, they tend to get more detailed, and I would say almost like picky. It's almost like there's so many more, I think, revisions in that. Maybe because they're paying a lot more, I don't know. But when you are connected solely with the client, like for example, I'm doing a project with USC building like elder abuse courses, and this one's actually an Articulate Rise. There's a bit more autonomy, and they like the product, the visuals, everything looks good. And from like a normal person, everything looks good, but if you have an instructional designer, you're almost like butting heads, you know. I prefer not to work with people in their department who may be an instructional designer on their end and they're critiquing your work.
I, I have found that in some of the conversations I've had is that, like there's like two camps of IDs out there. There's the ones that are more, I guess, pragmatic and practical in their approach. And then maybe like purists who I mean, I've heard instructional designers, like shy away from Rise because of, everything is template and you can't do, I mean, I have found that you can do a lot with Rise.
Yeah, you can.
Sometimes, people like to reinvent the wheel, make things more difficult than they should. But
I know. No, I agree.
even
Even with Rise, you can embed storylines. So
Yeah.
you can pretty much do anything you want, like you did in storyline, and just embed it in there, and you just make sure the layout doesn't look too squished because you're embedding it. But yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Where do you think the future is going? I mean, put your futurist glasses on.
No idea. I've been wrong with so many things, like trying to predict something. Like for example, like the housing market. I thought we were hitting the bubble like 5 years ago, and then the housing market, like like when COVID hit, I was like, oh yes, we get to kind of move to a bigger home now that we can get discounts. But obviously, no, it did the complete opposite. I'm not really sure what I just know e-learning, the field of e-learning is getting bigger. And I think one thing, maybe the visibility of instructional design is going to be bigger and bigger. My hope is that it doesn't become like the next teaching institution where every company is hiring, because every like company like Amazon, Microsoft, they're so big, they're almost like a public organization, they're almost like a school.
Yeah, they're offering, I mean, like Google right now is offering complete, certificate programs for people.
In instructional design?
No, well, no.
Oh, okay. Oh, in coding, like programming and stuff like that.
Right. So it's a great business model, right? Because they get people to take classes from them, and then I guess they get to hire the better ones. I mean, it's a good business model. Did you because your background is in education and you have a doctorate in education, but was it in instructional technologies or?
It was what was it? It wasn't leadership. It was more of the learning side of it.
Got it.
Because I know when I got it, you could choose between leadership, organization, or something like that, and then it was more towards the education aspect. I wouldn't say it was e-learning specific. It was more education. My dissertation was actually was a statistical analysis on school funding and achievement. So actually, it wasn't even, e-learning related,
right?
But it was more focused on, does the money spent affect how much of a achievement that, or that district or school does.
Sure.
So it wasn't technology related.
Okay. So the instructional design discipline you learned on your own.
Correct. I mean, most of the discipline can be found in the whole teaching credential itself. Like the whole program, like learning, adult theories, pedagogy. Was it andragogy?
Yep.
I like to use pedagogy for some reason, but it's the whole theory of learning. It's very applicable to adults and students. There's just minor differences. The way to research and create outlines, all of the research aspect of instructional design, I think is embedded in the teaching schools and those credentials, and even in the field of education.
Sure.
So the theoretical and the education background, I think my education background was plenty in terms of the background.
But yours focused more on pedagogy than andragogy.
It was more towards students, but it was minor differences. But and then the technology aspect in terms of building out the courses, I personally don't think there's a school out there that will train you to build e-learning courses that's out there.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I'm finding that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though, for my doctoral program was in instructional technologies and distance
Oh,
education.
nice. Okay.
So we did have, but I find that, and maybe it's because, I don't know when did you get your doctorate? What year?
In 2011, maybe.
Okay, so I got mine I started in 2009. I finally graduated in
Okay.
2014. And, in some ways, I saw a big difference, a big change in e-learning, because when I first started, like most of my professors did very little, and they covered very little in e-learning development, and so the instructional design as a discipline was, the discipline as a whole, but not focusing on e-learning production.
Correct. I 100% agree with that. And I noticed that if you're an instructional designer in higher ed or in the education sector, that looks very different from the corporate setting. There's a huge difference.
Yes.
There's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've noticed that right away.
Yeah, I find that on the academic side is very static, right? And sort of stagnant.
It's all LMS related too. They just want to make sure that course looks good and it's it's educationally sound within the LMS. So you're not really developing anything in an authoring tool.
Right. Yeah. And so on the corporate side is the opposite, right? On the corporate side, you're creating, at least for, when I was the chief learning officer, I would work with my team to make sure that it was rapid learning, video based, content that could be consumed on the go.
Correct.
So it was more mobile.
The academic setting is so formal. Everything, they're more focused on the structure. They're more focused on making sure all the standards meet with their standards. Whereas in the corporate setting, you need to just get the training out. We don't focus too much on, hey, is the objectives there? Are we tying the objectives? Which is good to do, but I noticed in most trainings, we're not making sure every standard is showing up on the front, and making sure we summarize and it connects with the standards, and making sure all the assessments is tied to the standards. Like, we don't have time. Most companies don't have the time to make sure all of that is intact.
Well, you're lucky, my friend, because I was working in the accounting space, and accountants have to get X number of credits of CPE every year, and the governing body for coursework and the course design, they were sticklers when everything had to line up. Exactly. Okay. It was brutal.
I guess if you have a governing body, that's their main job.
At times I had 3 instructional designers plus the instructor. We were all looking and really, trying to figure out what is it that these people want, because they were pretty brutal. But you feel that for the average everyday company out there, they're not too concerned with it. By the way, yeah, by the way, kids, we're not telling you to cut corners here. Make sure that you do that. But what do you have to say to that?
What was it? You know what? I guess I'll take it back. If the topic is, like, for example, if the company needs to go through legal, or if it has to go through, like, a pharmaceutical company, right? I did a project with a pharmaceutical company. If it has to go through, like, the legal aspect or the scientific aspect of it, they will make sure that the content is accurate.
Right.
They don't want to get sued, stuff like that. In terms of the content, it has to fit. It has to be approved. Now, in the way you structure the e-learning, most of them won't care if you have the objectives lined up in the beginning, or if your knowledge check is not 100% aligned with the standards. Like, if you're just checking for something that may not be in the objectives, but in the course, they focus less on that. But the content, it has to be accurate for, if it has to be approved by legal or a department that, or they don't want to get lawsuit.
The more regulation there is on
Correct. Oh,
their
yeah,
end.
there it is. Regulation.
Yeah, and it was the same for in the accounting world, right? That you want to make sure that
Yeah.
that accountants are taking the right content and it's being presented in the right
Correct. Yep.
format. Yeah. What sector do you feel you're most hires you the most? What
Ooh.
industry out there?
That's a good question. I think they're all mixed. I have, higher ed for one. I have, I think Argonne, where they're contracted with FEMA, so that's a government one. Technology, Amazon or Microsoft. So I think it varies. It probably depends. Or T-Mobile was one did recently, but I think it varies. I'm not, because when you're instructional design, when you're in instructional design, you're not the SME, so it doesn't really matter
Right.
if you know the content very well or not. Like, I
Right.
personally don't know the content for most of these. Like, I'm not the expert.
Right. Right. So you're putting together. So you do the initial meetings with them and find out, or do they sort of like say, hey, here's the content we want you to develop? How does that?
Yes. I know in instructional design, you play the aspect of interviewing or gathering source materials and synthesizing the source materials to create a script and stuff like that. I personally don't like that aspect of it. So whenever I get brought on board, I let them know I focus more on the design and
The
development
design.
of the
Got it.
authoring tool. So typically they'll just give me a script or the content.
Got it.
Like, here's the content, and then they may not have a storyboard, which I don't care if they don't have a storyboard. Just give me the words that you want to be either read as a voiceover or as the on-screen text, and then I'll design it. Sometimes they'll give me a huge document, and then maybe I'll decide which sections to put and then add some knowledge checks. But rarely do I go from zero, like where they don't know what training needs to be done. They don't have an outline. They don't even have a plan. I know there are IDs who do the discovery process. I personally, I turn down those type of projects. So I'm kind of limiting myself.
Yeah, it's
but
a lot more intense.
I don't like writing. Not a fan of writing.
Do you do a lot of voiceovers, or?
I tell people my voiceover is a placeholder. So if they don't have the budget, I'll use the voiceover because I think it sounds better than the text to speech voiceovers.
Yeah.
But I'm not a professional voice actor. I make sure they know that right away, because voice acting it's a whole different profession. They sound really good, and I can't match that.
Yeah, same here. I hate the way I sound.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, dang, I sound like that. That's awful.
Plus, I have a little bit of an accent too, so it's I'm self-conscious about that.
I tell myself all the time every time I hear my voice.
Cringe. Now that I'm doing this, I have to like edit my own work.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my goodness, that's what I really look like, and this is the voice.
Now that we're getting older, it's just everything just hangs out, and it's just, I know.
Well, it's all about positioning, my friend. So you got to make sure that you put the camera, just in the right angle.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What do you now? By the way, and I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the reason I came across your profile is that you're sort of a big star in TikTok. You're probably one of the most
I feel special.
If not probably the most popular instructional designer I've seen in TikTok.
I would be amazed if that was true. I mean, there's so many talented,
But you're really, I mean, the way you come across and the way you explain things on TikTok, it's just like, it's fantastic.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
How did you get involved in doing TikTok?
Watching a lot of TikTok. I can spend literally, there are times I might have spent like 3 hours just looking at the For You page.
But would you look at other instructional designers or
No, I don't look at it.
okay?
It's more for entertainment. Like, but then you know what the surprising thing is? I've learned so much on TikTok, like new technologies that are out there. Like, for example, you know, there's a AI tool that literally writes articles for you.
Yes.
You heard about that? Like,
Yes, there's several. There's actually several
isn't that
platforms
crazy?
out. Yes, it's crazy.
I've came across one. They said that they actually you can create animated videos. I mean, they're kind of clunky,
Yes, Cynthia.
but
I think it's called Cynthia. Not that I want to make a plug here, but it's pretty scary.
that one, yeah, with the AI person, I
Yes,
tested that out. That one's impressive.
it's very impressive. Did you see that you can also like? I mean, yeah, it's a premium package, but you can record yourself, right? And
Oh, and
then
then have it lay over to the
yeah,
AI person.
it's
Yeah,
you moving your lips and doing the instruction.
yeah. That I feel like that's it could be a very handy tool for the L&D sector
I
for
agree.
fast turnaround e-learning.
I agree. Yeah, and it's gonna be. I mean, it's cheaper, right? You don't have to hire so many actors.
Yeah. No, I mean, I actually learned a lot through TikTok. There's a lot of things I learned, even Photoshop tips, or
Yeah,
there's a lot. And then one thing as adults and, people like mature people, like we have to make sure we block and hide all the inappropriate ones. That's number one. Like, because anybody who signs up on TikTok, the first things you'll see is the ones that everybody wants to look at. All the, like you got girls dancing and stuff like that. You have to filter all of that out before you start getting content that's,
got it,
more appropriate and more like for our purposes.
got it, got it, got
Um,
it. So is it based on the hashtags you use or your searches?
no,
Like,
what I like to do is if it's something that is not something that's beneficial to me or useful to me or appropriate, I have you hold down the video and then put either not interested in or hide videos from this user.
got it. But there you are. You're in the space and you're creating a big impact. So that's positive. That's positive.
Yeah,
And
it's I'm glad it's helping people. I
you're you're
mean,
you're influencing a lot of. I mean, you're an influencer. I mean,
oh man, I feel that sounds really cool.
yeah, well, you're influencing a lot of people in the space, right? And like you mentioned, maybe you mentioned that because of your background in education, you have a lot of
Yeah.
teachers, right, who look to you to sort of point the way, right? Point the way
Yep.
to
I'm glad it's helping. And I know there's so many other IDs who are better than me. So it's a
you mean
matter of time. It's a matter
yeah,
of time before they take over
well,
the space.
we won't let that happen, my friend. we, we will
Yeah.
promote you. We will promote you because I think that what you do is incredible. Any words of advice you would give somebody who's maybe thinking about making the switch?
Yeah. If you're a teacher, it's difficult to let that go because you have tenure, right? And you have the pension and you have a lot of things. You got the summers off. So I don't know. I wouldn't tell everybody to jump ship and then pursue instructional design. It's entirely up to them to genuinely decide if they really want to do that or not. Because if you go to the corporate world, it's not like teaching. You can get fired right away.
Yeah,
Like for as a contractor, things can stop anytime. So
right.
those are some of the things that hopefully they're aware that it's different from teaching, but it's a more fulfilling role, especially if you don't have the passion to teach. I mean, a lot of teachers enjoy teaching. They like seeing people learn. I think in the corporate setting, you can do a little bit more of that than in the classroom setting where you have to classroom manage all the time.
Right.
So it's a very it can be a fulfilling career. If you are teaching, start small. Start with Upwork. I think I just did a video today. Go to upwork.com, bid very low because you're competing with, overseas people. You have to bid very low, and there's a lot of projects related to e-learning, related to instructional design, curriculum development, a lot of K through 12 stuff too. Start with there and start building small projects there. You have to start very low, like, start with the small projects.
Yeah.
And then gain more experience, and as your resume grows, and eventually recruiters will find you, and then you can move on.
How much in your experience, how much did your, the gigs you got depended on having a pretty solid portfolio?
Oh yeah, that I stress that all the time too. I think portfolio is a must.
Yeah.
Even if you're an instructional designer that prefers not to do that, there's a lot of companies and IDs who don't even develop. There's tons of those. But at least in this day and age, you have to have a portfolio sample.
Yes.
To let them know that this is what I could bring to the table. Because at the end of the day, if you're building e-learning, it's not about how good the content is in terms of the writing.
Right.
The end product is what am I seeing?
Yes.
So if your visuals don't look good, it kind of hurts you in terms of like marketing yourself.
Yeah.
And I always refer them to use leverage assets. Like, I don't hand draw anything. I don't hand animate. I actually just leverage assets out on the internet, pay a subscription, download it, change some colors around, add another element there or there or here or there, and make it look good.
Yeah.
That's the end goal. We're not creative, we're not graphic designers. We're not illustrators.
Well, and there's a danger of maybe trying to do too much, right? I always tell, I would tell my instructional designers, less is more, right? Simplicity is the key, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Some people, they also prefer a lot of white space in their e-learning as well.
Yeah.
But having a portfolio sample you have to have one to stand out. I think that's number one.
And what about maybe getting involved with? I know that I had a conversation with a colleague of mine, and so getting involved with ATD maybe, or
oh yeah, yeah. Although I'll be a hypocrite because I don't think I signed up. Like, I'm not I'm not a member.
You're not a member?
No. I think you had to pay like an annual fee, and I was too cheap. I was like, I don't want to do that.
Did you have you become like part of forums or?
Yeah, you know what though, the Articulate forums is definitely is a lifesaver.
Yeah, yeah.
You type in the search field anything you have questions on in storyline or Rise, and you get answers right away.
Yeah.
Not so with Captivate. You go to those forums. They like bash you, and they start name calling. Storyline and Articulate.
It's a different community. Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, again, there's nothing new under the sun, right? And again, when you're starting out, maybe what you want to do is, not copy, but mimic, right? Model what some other people are doing, what's successful, right? Because that's how you, and then you can start putting your own, your own signature, right?
Definitely
on your courses. But at first, that's how I learned, right? I learned by templates, looking at a lot of stuff out there, and then slowly mimicking what I was doing. Which, by the way, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to mimic you in don't worry, not in instructional design. Not in instructional design. That's your field. But in corporate training and LMS management and all of that, I'm going to be the TikTok,
I've never danced on that. I don't feel good enough to, shake my body, but you should start it.
Do anything else in any other platform, or is just?
I do YouTube. YouTube is so much harder to gain traction, but for longer videos and tutorials, I'll try to have a YouTube channel. I think I should upload more for tutorials. I also have.
You're gonna be able to upload this podcast. So
Cool.
yeah, yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely,
it. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm pretty sure I'll upload it. And then I created 2 courses on Udemy or Udemy
Yeah,
that
Udemy. Yeah,
just for passive income purposes. I have one. The title was K-12 to Instructional Design, which I think actually surprisingly people are enrolling. So it's a good. I'm trying to improve it on it more because I think the ratings right now is 4 out of 5 stars, which is it's decent, but I would like to be closer to 5.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, as a side hustle, I'm trying to do that as more of a passive income type thing.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, in Twitter, I randomly post once in a while. I almost feel like it's not even worth it because
Yeah,
it's hard to gain followers on that.
yeah. It's it's getting crowded out there, right?
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah,
But you have to put in the work, and you have to be good at what you do. I mean, that's probably the you don't have to be the best, but you have to be, because
yeah,
that's what's going to lead to referrals. It's going to lead to building your own brands, building your
yep.
reputation in whatever space you're in. And so no, this has been fun. I really appreciate your time,
Oh,
and
same here. It was
no,
good. It
this
was.
this
I
is a lot of
appreciate it
fun.
too.
We gotta do this again. And by the way, those of you watching, follow Jay. I'm gonna put all the links. And
Thank you.
I don't know. I know that you're a busy guy, and so I don't want people necessarily reaching out to you. But if I
No, no,
reach,
no.
I
That's what I
reach.
say all the time too. I on my videos, if they have any questions, most of them don't reach out anyway. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's I have no
Well,
problem.
well, I'm a geek and I like to learn. So I reached out to you and reached out again, and
No, yeah, you know what? That second time you approached me in LinkedIn definitely helped because there's so many like spams.
sure.
The fact that you followed up was, it definitely worked.
Well, there you go. There you go. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully this was an educational, entertaining, motivational experience for you. I really enjoyed spending time with Jay. I hope you did too. Stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more coming, and we'll see you next time.